You are looking at the face of the X-Man. His name is John D'Souza. He was a special agent with the FBI, and he has extensive experience investigating the paranormal, both during his time with the FBI and after his time with the FBI. He is still investigating because he knows the truth is out there. Now, myself, Beth, and Paul, who are Shed Show Talk, invited John into our shed in order to have a conversation about your questions, our questions, your stories, and even our personal disclosure contact stories too. In fact, we had so many questions, we've got enough material for a few videos. So ensure that you join the conversation by simply hitting that subscription button and the notification bell and leaving comments in the comments section. Also, if you're into Twitter, we have an active and small Twitter community, and it's a great place to share information with us at Shed Show Talk. Now, let's get into this investigation with John D'Souza, because we have really serious questions about aliens, UFOs, reptilians, the Goat Man, secret projects, how to get proof, and more. This is just the beginning. It's time to enter the shed for truth and proof. Welcome to Shed Show Talk. My name is Beth.
And I'm Paul.
Today we're going to interview former special agent with the FBI, John D'Souza. And Paul, he has some clear connections with the X-Files.
Absolutely, he does. And I've done my research before meeting John. Hey, John, you are with us right now. How are you?
I'm great. Paul, Beth, thank you so much for having me on here. Anyway, I am John D'Souza, the X-Man. I was an FBI agent for over 20 years in the USA. And during that time, I had a top secret security clearance. I was an attorney as well. I dealt with nothing but evidence, and I spent a lot of time in courtrooms, let me just tell you that. And as an expert witness, as an investigator, as a prosecutorial assistant, everything, all kinds of things. I spent a lot of time in our federal court system. And so I know that in this area of the paranormal, the greatest problems that we have, I know, is this understanding of what evidence is, what testimony means, what reality really is. Because unfortunately, in the United States, the idea of evidence and what is real has been completely destroyed by television, by CSI, and all these horrible shows that tell us that the scientists in lab coats and test tubes are the only ones that can tell us what really happened. And nothing could be further from the truth. The only ones who can tell us what really has happened and what goes on every day, whether in the paranormal or in the real world, as we know it, is our investigators, people who know what evidence means and what reality really is based on, not scientists. So anyway, that's my intro. That's my usual intro of myself, Beth and Paul.
And John, reality can be stranger than it really seems, as we all know in this group.
Absolutely. And one of the things in preparation for today's video, we went out and we talked to the people in our Shed Show community saying, what kind of questions would you like to ask John D'Souza about the X-Files, about legitimizing testimony, legitimizing witnesses with practical FBI tools, which really, in my opinion, needs to happen in disclosure movement, is people are seeking external affirmation from government authorities, and that hasn't yet happened. Do you find that people come to you seeking that legitimization of their story or experience?
Sometimes they do. I was recently approached by a very large, important group in the paranormal. And then when they saw that I deal with real evidence and finding out what's really true, they quietly walked away and didn't want anything more to do with me. So, yeah, people really are desperate to get standards and understandings as to what evidence really means and what's real. Because the paranormal, I'm going to tell you something you already know. The paranormal, for the elite powers in control, for the global powers, it is extremely important for them to control the paranormal, the supernatural, ufology. And the reason for that is because they know all these things are true. And they use these things themselves all the time. So it's incredibly important for them to control these areas. And they continue to do that since time immemorial. And to them, it's more important than controlling economics, controlling politics, because those areas are never going to spark a great awakening in the mainstream, in the billions of people in the mainstream. They never are. But the paranormal could create a dangerous awakening. The metaphysical, ufology, could create a dangerous awakening in their property, which is the mainstream of humanity. And they have to avoid that at all costs.
That would cost them control, and I think that that's one of the things that I certainly have been working very, very hard to kind of select a narrative and go with that way, so we can actually unveil what is happening. And I believe that maybe there are segments of the government, which is one of the questions that I have for you, that don't really know what this is. They know it's happening, but they don't know what it is. If you were in a courtroom, which you have experience with, is there a particular case that you would bring to that courtroom that you believe that you would win to prove beyond reasonable doubt? Is there a case that you can select that you would present in the courtroom?
Yes, that's why I wrote my first book, The Extradimensionals, which is what I wrote to really present those cases like an investigative file. And those are, I mean, first and foremost, you would have to say the Travis Walton case, where there were numerous witnesses to this young man who's like, 21 years old, and he's back in 1975, and he's in the forest with his crew, and they appears above the tree line in a clearing, a UFO, which is really a plasma-filled vehicles filled with light.
Could you tell us a bit further about the case you were just speaking about that you would present to the court?
Yes.
Not just for the court, but also to affirm to the public that there is evidence that can be measured to prove that there is paranormal activity.
Absolutely. The Travis Walton case in 1975 was a very young man who who was with his logging crew in Sitgraves, Arizona in 1975, who saw a UFO plasma vehicle that was about 60 feet in diameter. It was hovering soundlessly up above the tree line in a clearing, and he very foolishly decided to run underneath it as his entire crew is in a pickup truck screaming at him to stop. And he ran underneath this vehicle as it was getting ready to take off. And what happened was the vehicle gave off some kind of bolt of energy, and it basically struck him down dead. Now, what's important about this case is there's so many witnesses that saw what happened. Now, after the thing struck him down dead, basically, it took off and it returned, because we're just surmising that someone connected to that vehicle realized, oh my goodness, we did something that we didn't mean to. There's a dead human being on the ground, and they returned and picked him up. Now there's another witness that most people don't know about, who was only very recently revealed by Travis Walton and his group, who was a military guy who was in the forest that evening, because it was already nightfall at that time. And he was in the forest. He was hunting for something you hunt for at night, maybe frogs. I don't know what you hunt for at night. But he was in the forest. He emerged from the forest in one moment, and he was a local soldier with the local military base. And he was on his own time. He emerged from the forest. He looked to his right, and he saw a pickup truck peeling out like a bat out of hell, and just a lot of smoke as the wheels were kicking up. And he heard a bunch of guys screaming inside that pickup truck. Then he looked to his left, and he saw what I put on the cover of my book, The Extradimensionals. He saw a very young, skinny, white Caucasian man being lifted up into the bottom of a UFO hovering ship in a spotlight. That's why I put this on the cover of my book, The Extradimensionals, because it really captured my imagination when I heard him talk about it. That's what he saw. And then the young man disappeared into the ship and was gone. He went to his military base commander that a few days later, because these young men were going to be indicted for murder by the FBI and state troopers as well. They were investigating, and they were getting ready to indict his entire logging crew for murder 5 days later. And so this soldier, the witness who saw this happen, went to his base commander and said, "Can I come forward to the police and tell them what I saw?" And the base commander said to him, "No, not until they're indicted. Once they're indicted, if that happens, when that happens, then you can go forward and tell the local state troopers what you saw and that night." And luckily, 5 days later, Travis Walton reappeared, and the indictment was off the table, thank goodness, even though those witnesses have been persecuted ever since. So that and also the weight of authenticity of Travis Walton and his witnesses, who have not changed one bit of their testimony over, what is it, like 40 years now, I think? 1975.
Yeah, it would be.
So,
It would be.
yeah,
Wow.
like 40 years. And despite that, let me tell you this, there have been globalist agents, I believe they are globalist funded agents, who have persecuted Travis Walton and his witnesses, offered them money to lie that this was all a fabricated story, have persecuted them for many years. And that is a matter of record. That is documented. And so despite all that, the weight of authenticity of these witnesses is really your strongest evidence that they have nothing, they have really very little to gain from this story, and yet have maintained their veracity, their credibility, their absolute stoic integrity for 40 years. That is tremendous evidence.
It is, and they even passed polygraphs and
Right.
to pass them
Yeah.
to prove
That's right.
that this was right. Where do you think those beings came from that took Travis? From his recounts of that?
I believe that they came from other dimensions, because when I first joined the FBI, I was introduced to documents from FBI agents and cases that showed me that the FBI has been involved in investigating UFOs for quite a while, and that showed me that alien visitors are not really physical like we are. They are not locked inside of UFOs like we would get on a bus. They are not. They are simply travelers who change their vibration from their dimensions and then come to our dimension, matching our physical vibrations for periods of time. And anybody who wants to see that link, it's basically FBI Vault. I'm sorry, vault.fbi.gov. You go to that link, you open up the big tab that says Unexplained Phenomena, click on that. That opens up cattle mutilation investigation. That opens up extrasensory perception investigation, opens up UFOs. And if you hit UFOs on that, after that, it'll open up many, many groups of UFO documents. But if you go to the number one group there of UFO documents, it'll take you to page 22. On page 22, if you go to page 22, then you hit the document that I'm talking about, the one that I was first introduced to, which is a memorandum of importance dated July 8th, 1947. And it is the document, one-page document with no strikeouts, that shows that an FBI agent said he had an informant who has given him startling conclusions about alien visitors. And that informant is supernatural, he said. He said, in his words, he said supernormal, which is an old-timey word for supernatural. And that informant told him about 7 or 8 conclusions that are startling and that he revealed on that document, the most suppressed document in all of ufology. And it is something that anyone today can download and look at for themselves.
We're going to post that for everybody so they
Good.
can actually follow along.
I really want to get this in though. So,
All right, you go for
while
it.
talking about this guy who has had this contact, John, we've
Yes.
heard a lot of rumors that there were actually agents within the government that were alien in origin. Have you heard anything like that?
I heard, and this is again, this is what we call raw data. You may call them rumors, but in the intelligence community, we call it raw data because it can be useful. Even something as tenuous as rumors can be taken. It can be cross-referenced. You can look at the patterns inside of it. You can see what is useful for further investigation. Anyway, I heard rumors that when Obama was president, there were like Secret Service guys who were reptilian in nature. They were supposed they're not Secret Service guys, but they were posing as, Secret Service bodyguards for the president. They would be part of his group there. So it would look like they were Secret Service agents, but when people would take certain pictures of them, and you may see one of those pictures on one of my trailers.
Is
but
the bald fellow?
Yes,
Okay.
That's it. That individual, no one has ever found out who that guy was, but he was with Obama's group all the time for a period, and depending on how pictures were taken of that guy, he really looked reptilian in nature.
And he would obviously be physical, so do you have any idea where he would come from?
Well, I think they all come from the same place, which is not the same place, but the same type of place, which is they are extra dimensionals. That's why I wrote my book, because this whole phenomena is extra dimensional. Other dimensions, whether you're talking reptilians, Nordics, whether you're talking any other grays, whether you're talking just regular grays, I think they all come from other dimensions, but they are able to achieve physicality for short periods of time. They can't be here permanently for some reason. I didn't make up these rules. I just observed them. And obviously in the past, during the time prehistory of the Anunnaki, it appears that they had no problem being here physically as long as they wanted. But something changed. Something happened that changed everything, so that these alien visitors cannot be here on a permanent basis anymore.
Our lens of what an alien is largely dictated by Spielberg and company. So people have these images in their mind. When they have experiences, there's whether they're picked up or like you levitated to the ceiling of your room, or they have different encounters, they're not always physically seeing what's happening to them, which causes an intellectual discord, which leads people to question everything. And I feel like what people want from you as a former FBI special agent who has seen and investigated on X-File types of events is people want that validity to say there's someone in authority who can tell me that my evidence is sufficient as a testimony to say these things happen to me, and that is disclosure. Do you find that there's an awareness within the community about interdimensional beings? For example, Dr. Stephen Greer, Dr. Stanton Friedman, To the Stars Academy, Robert Bigelow, or Gaia TV, what's the MUFON? Is there some kind of common conversation about interdimensional beings?
Yeah, I think there is now. It's in the last 10 years or so, there's a lot more understanding that this is an extra dimensional phenomena, and there's travel between them. This is not a question of alien visitors locking themselves up into tin cans like sardines, and like we would. That's what we would do. But they're not like us. They're not like humans. They are completely different from humans. It is not the way that Spielberg and all these other guys have trained us in the last, however long it's been. This is a phenomenon that is completely different than what we thought. And UFOs that are real, there's probably no one inside of them. They are empty, because they themselves are another form of life that is also transiting from other dimensions and appearing here temporarily, just like alien visitors do. This is a question of gateways and wormholes. This is not a question of tin cans that people lock themselves in and shoot across the galaxies. That's what we're looking at. And I think all those individuals that you mentioned are beginning to realize that. Now, the problem is there are very powerful agendas that are completely invested in us believing that this is a purely physical phenomena. That's why this doctrine of interdimensionality is something that's not widely accepted, and it's not going to be, because the popular culture wants us to believe that if we just launch enough rockets into outer space with humans locked inside of them, they're going to contact alien visitors, or we'll receive signals from outer space, that we'll hear a message in a bottle or something. But they're not here in outer space. They're just not. They're actually, in a sense, they're here with us right now, but they're just in another level of reality.
I have a question for you no one's been able to answer, and I have not yet put this on the air, but I'm willing to do so now. There was a circumstance where I have to think, I haven't gone public with this story yet.
Do it, Beth. Bust it out.
Bust it out. I had a sensation of something pushing through the dimension under my pillow towards my brain. And I felt immediate danger and threat. I jumped up, and there on my pillow was an entire facial impression of what appeared to be a goat man. I snapped a photo of it, posted it to Facebook, because I was home alone. Why not? Of course, these things happen. I didn't say anything. I just posted the photo, and immediately, get out, get out, get out, get out. And that's precisely what I did. I haven't told many people about this story because it hasn't seemed relevant. But when we're talking about interdimensionals, I have a visual experience of a sensation in my mind, followed by getting up and a physical representation in the natural world. Those two things to me seem a little more than a coincidence. And I'd love your FBI lawyer legal expertise mind dealing with that raw testimonial power.
Okay, well, the first thing I would say is that I need to test out my investigative theory, which people always deny. Universally, they always deny it. But I have to ask, just before that happened to you, did you engage, before you had the experience with the gateway and the goat creature coming through the pillow, I have to ask, is it possible, did you engage in any activity that may have been taken as consent by these powers on the other side of that gateway?
This was different. It was reminiscent of previous encounters and stories that I had heard, but it also felt like an unwelcomed invasion.
Okay. And because if you look at, when you look through my books, because I am an attorney, I always take note throughout the paranormal and the supernatural and ufology, I take note of laws that operate universally, because there is ultimately a creator force that has put these things together. And if it didn't have laws operating across not just the physical world, but across metaphysical world as well, there would be utter chaos and entropy, and nothing would have any order in order for life to be able to function. So, having said that, one of the major rules of investigation, and this is true even if you're a ghost hunter or you're in a paranormal investigator, is that one of the first things you always do is you look for how the person gave consent, or created an invitation for these other dimensional creatures to be in unison with them, in whatever manner. And the reason you look for that always is so that if the person now doesn't want contact with them, they can stop that behavior. You see?
And then they never come to me, and I'm mad at them for that.
Is being awake enough, being a light in the expanse of the interdimensional universe, enough to be a quote-unquote invitation?
No, I don't believe so. No, being awake would not. There would have to be some sort of affirmative action that the person would have to engage in order to create the invitation.
I mean, I tend to get an overwhelming amount of unidentified aerial phenomena. I really do.
Nice.
I get UFOs. They're documented on the channel. I obviously keep cameras with me. Very well documented. My first.
Do you feel like you're summoning them? Do you feel like you're summoning them?
He does.
We've done a summoning. Yeah.
Oh, good, good.
On camera and caught on
Good.
camera.
Good.
With
Now,
Beth.
but observation experiences are not contact. It's not the same. So no one needs any special permission to come to you and let you look at them. And that, as a matter of fact, is a whole nother area of phenomena where many times spiritual powers and ethereal powers will show themselves, present themselves to a human consciousness because they want to get you interested in them, so that you will engage in some of this invitation behavior, giving consent for them to make that connection with you.
I completely give them consent and they just don't come. I have watched the skull experiments though. Are you familiar with the skull experiment?
Oh yeah, yes,
Wow.
I saw a lot of that.
It blows the lid off everything for me. You know, I believe in this stuff. I truly do. But without having that visual touch, the feel, the seeing it for myself,
Yeah.
I can't take it that other step. And that isn't even good enough for me. To see that isn't even good enough for me. For me, I want to communicate. I want to put them in front of a camera like we are right now. And I want to have that interview with them because I believe there's an intelligence to them.
So then you probably won't listen to the advice I give to my friends when they have observation experiences. I always tell them, just don't, when you're underneath a UFO, don't put your arms up like this.
My arms would be
because
up.
That's what I figure. That's what I figure.
Take me, but let me record the heck out of you.
Yeah.
And absolutely, for me, it's not enough that they're flying around in the sky, or that in a recent video that I just did, the air traffic control are getting these visuals of a dot in the sky and planes flying about, and initially radar contact and then no radar contact. You know, for me, that's not enough. I want them in front of me and you, so we can stop guessing what their intentions are, and that's where I want to go.
Yeah, but you know that a lot of people who go with them may never come back. There's a percentage of them. Never. Okay, Beth, we'll have to talk about this offline.
I've tried. You can clearly tell we have a lot of conversations about this. One comes from an exorcist and a priest. His question is, he had previously done deep research that had his computing systems tracked by the NSA, FBI, potentially the CIA. He has since moved on into another field of work, but he would really like to hear what you have to say about the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project.
I believe that both of those projects, the Montauk project, I believe both of those actually did happen, and that there's lots of records of those two incidents happening. The Philadelphia experiment being the subject of many movies, I believe, and television show where they experimented with transporting a war vessel from one place to another in time, and there was a problem with when they desolidified. Many of the crew supposedly sank through. They desolidified themselves and they sank into the ground of the ship and died horrible deaths. That was one of the drawbacks of the Philadelphia experiment. But that supposedly happened around World War II or something. And that, I absolutely believe that did happen. And it was one of the most top secret projects of that period, along with delivering the nuclear bomb, was probably the only other project that was as secret as that one, as the Philadelphia experiment was. So that I absolutely believe happened. The Montauk project also absolutely did happen. It is the subject of a great show on Netflix called Stranger Things. Stranger Things. That you guys are familiar with that?
I believe
That
so, yes.
Yeah, that actually is the story. I think it's in the second season now, but that is actually the story of the CIA and DoD operation that was picking selected children who exhibited certain characteristics and training them to develop their mental powers. And at the same time as doing that, they actually they use sorcery as well. This is one of the things that people don't understand about all these CIA projects, MK Ultra, and all these CIA projects that are used. They think it's just advanced science, and it is when they do these special projects like the Montauk Project. But there's also what we understand as sorcery involved. There's an element of sorcery. But then again, I mean, Arthur C. Clarke said that science that is sufficiently advanced looks like sorcery to us anyway. Absolutely. And maybe that's the case. But the Montauk Project did these training with children where they used spiritual energy to infuse the DNA of these children and develop in them other powers that they could use and demonstrate in the physical world. But in doing so, they apparently released some kind of dark spiritual energies or entities that wrought havoc upon them, upon the scientific crew that was in the immediate area, and went on to commit some mass murders also in the perimeter of where the Montauk Project was going on. So that was just one element that happened in the Montauk Project, but those two items are absolutely true. That's I know that was what I had to say on that.
So you've said before on other interviews that you are actually investigated yourself for what would be the storylines in the popular sci-fi TV show, The X-Files. Is there any particular episode we should watch of that? Of The X-Files?
You should watch any episode that has to do with alien technology being given over to FBI agents or being lent to them for them to examine, and the sources of that technology and what ultimately happened with that technology. Oh, you two are awesome.
There we go. All right.
Nice.